You know, the problem with ghost hunting is it's all fun and games until the ghosts start hunting you. Have you ever been watching one of those shows and wondered what would happen if they ran into a real spirit? Well, this crew of idiots is about to find out, and the only way to leave this asylum is in a body bag. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the asylum spirits in grave encounters. This place is about to turn into hell on earth. The story begins with an interview of an executive producer at a reality TV network. Years before ghost hunting shows became popular, they started getting tapes in the mail from this guy, Lance Preston, who was trying to pitch them a new series, Grave Encounters. Things started off great, but it wasn't until they got to the 6th episode that everything changed. For this episode, Lance and his team arrive at the abandoned Collingwood Psychiatric Hospital. The building was shut down back in the 60s, and ever since, there have been reports of paranormal activity still taking place. To find out if the stories are true, they're about to spend 8 hours locked inside, but as you can guess, that was their biggest mistake. They start off talking to this dorky guy, Morgan, a local historian who explains that the hospital was first opened over 100 years ago. Back in those days, people treated it more like a dump for family members who they didn't want to take care of, leaving them in terrible conditions that were even worse than prison. The staff was just as bad, and the worst was Dr. Friedkin, a neurosurgeon who really loved lobotomies. But his career was cut short when 6 of his patients broke loose in the middle of the night and turned the surgeon into Swiss cheese. The first thing that they notice is a big cheesy "Death Awaits" painted on the door as the caretaker Kenny lets them in. They think it's funny now, but in just a few hours, they won't be laughing anymore. Okay, these jabronis might think that they're ready for anything, but the truth is that they have absolutely no idea what they're getting themselves into. This place hasn't been properly maintained since the 60s, which means that every room could be a death trap full of rusty metal, broken glass, and walls that could collapse at any second. Even if the ghost stories all turn out to be fake, with no power besides their flashlights, they're running a huge risk of getting lost or badly injured while exploring the hallways after dark. Plus, because they're so isolated, it's going to be hard to call for help if there's trouble. And with Kenny planning to lock them in, they won't even be able to leave the building if anything goes wrong. Now, Lance might have come here expecting to find ghosts, but from the history of this place, he shouldn't expect them to be very friendly. In the early 1900s, when the hospital was open, these types of places were notorious for treating their patients in inhumane ways. They'd often be mistreated and left in unsanitary conditions, and the trauma would only end up making their conditions worse. One treatment that he mentioned, lobotomies, were a type of controversial brain surgery that cut the connections to the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for regulating emotions and behavior. These procedures almost always had severe side effects, leaving the patient in a confused, zombie-like state that they could never really fully recover from. If that's the type of stuff that's going down behind these doors, then this place is going to be a breeding ground for hostile spirits. And some of them probably want revenge. The best thing going for them right now is safety in numbers, because at any given time, you always have several meat shields around to throw at the ghosts if you need to escape. They also know that the caretaker is coming back at 6 a.m., so as long as they can survive until morning, they should be alright. The most important thing is to stick together. That way they can all watch each other's backs, not just for the ghosts, but for the physical threats too. Before he leaves, they should try to get as much info as they can from Kenny here, like if there are any dangerous areas, how to quickly get out if there's an emergency, and if he has a map of the building that could help them navigate if they get lost. As they explore the building, they should carry extra equipment like spare flashlights and radios so that they'll be prepared for whatever happens. And remember, even though the goal is to get footage of the ghosts, they should avoid directly provoking them at all costs, because some of them might not be happy to see you. If they run into any trouble, then the key is to stick together and get back to a safe area and call up Kenny for an early exit. In an interview, the man admits that he's a skeptic, but sometimes when he's working working late at night, he gets the feeling that he's being watched. As he leads them on a tour of the building, he warns them that there isn't any backup power, and the entire place will be pitch black once the sun goes down. On the top floor, there's a very interesting window that he stops to point out, saying how he closes it every night only to find it open when he comes back in the morning, and Matt marks it off as a potential hotspot. Down the hall, they come to a room with writing all over the place. It looks like this guy was trying to say something about demons in the walls, but there's no way to be sure. Next up are the showers. There's a tub in the middle of the room where a young patient supposedly died, and if you listen closely, you can sometimes hear the sound of running water late at night. As they go to leave, Sasha here seems a little too interested in the tub, but the cameraman TC snaps her out of it. The last part of their tour takes them down to the maze-like tunnels that connect all 6 buildings over the 80-acre property. He says that he's felt strange temperature drops down here, and the vibes are so creepy that Sasha actually gets scared by her own shadow. Now it's time for some more interviews, and Lance starts with a contractor who was hired to renovate the place back in the 90s. The job only lasted 2 weeks, with the workers reporting strange noises and tools disappearing in the middle of the night. The only one who got it the worst was a guy who fell off a ladder. He survived, but he swears that something actually pushed him down and refused to come back to work ever again. Lance takes this opportunity to go over the different types of haunting, residual and intelligent, explaining how the first is like events for the past playing back on a loop, while the other type can actually interact with living people. After that, he interviews 2 local kids who say that they were making out one night when they spotted someone with a shaved head and a hospital gown watching them from the end of the hallway. That's when Houston Gray arrives, a psychic medium who Lance brought in for his professional expertise. In the showers, he instantly picks up on the spirit that's attached to the bathtub, and the host looks shocked that he figured this out on his own. But of course, Lance already told him about it ahead of time. And it was really all for the camera. In between shots, he openly admits that he isn't expecting to find a real ghost. All he cares about is getting good footage, even if they have to fake it. It's finally after dark, and Matt has to go room to room setting up cameras in all of the most haunted spots. He's not too worried until he gets to the subtunnels, but quickly decides to dip out of there and get back to the others. Back in the lobby, he gives Lance a breakdown of all of their equipment. They've got all the ghost hunting essentials, like an EMF meter to record electromagnetic spikes, a thermometer to check for temperature drops, an audio recorder to listen for spooky voices, and even a Geiger counter to measure radiation. As the clock strikes 10, it's time for the lockdown to start, and Kenny chains the doors, trapping them all inside until 6 a.m. TC questions why they couldn't just pretend to lock it, but soon a locked door is going to be the least of their worries. Alright you guys, let's talk about something serious for just a moment. Have you ever witnessed a car accident or been involved in one yourself? Accidents can be scary and leave you feeling overwhelmed, especially if you're injured. And let's face it, dealing with insurance companies in the aftermath of an injury can be a real hassle. Tons of paperwork, and the stress of getting better can make it hard to focus on what truly matters, which is your health. Here's where a strong team like Morgan & Morgan can come in. They specialize in helping people who've been seriously injured get the compensation they deserve. They're known for fighting for their clients and achieving incredible results. Like for example, just recently, they secured a whopping $12 million for a car crash victim in Florida. That's 34 times what the insurance company initially offered. Imagine the difference that kind of money could make in your life. Oh, and the best part is that you won't pay Morgan & Morgan a dime unless they win your case. They work on a contingency fee basis, so you have peace of mind knowing that there's no upfront cost. And let me tell you, not all of us can afford the representation that we deserve. So if you've been seriously injured in an accident, Saw game, or sinister death game, and you think you might have a case, don't let the insurance companies walk all over you. Morgan & Morgan might be able to help out. You can click the link at forthepeople.com/beat. The link is also in the description below, or you can hit the QR that's on the screen. It's so easy, and it could potentially change your life. Thanks, Morgan & Morgan, and now back to the show. Okay, the lockdown only started a few seconds ago, but I can already tell that these 5 are in for some trouble. First off, I'm gonna have to agree with TC here when he said that locking themselves inside for real was a terrible call. There are a million reasons why, and it's not just because of ghosts. What if there's some kind of fire or other kind of emergency and they need to get out quickly? Even Bear Grylls stayed in hotels when the cameras were off. And some people hated on him for that, but I'd say that it's smart. I mean, they fake everything else for the camera, so there's no reason why there had to be a real lock on the door. It just makes the situation even more dangerous. On the opposite end of things, we have our boy Houston here. Now, even he doesn't believe that he can contact real spirits, but by pretending to summon them, he might actually get something. The problem is, he won't have any control over which spirits decide to show up, and he could end up getting the attention of the bad ones, making things even more dangerous for everyone involved. Based on all of the stories that they've heard so far, it seems like this place doesn't have just one ghost, but all different kinds of supernatural entities. With so many people all backing the stories up, there's a good chance that they might actually find something for real this time, so they need to be careful what they wish for. As they explore the building, the best way to keep themselves safe is to start out with a solid plan. They should come up with a schedule of which areas they plan to explore and when. That way, they can maximize their chances of getting good footage, while also keeping things organized so that no one gets lost. Like, for example, we know that the doctor was just killed on the 2nd floor just after midnight, so that's a good time and place to get some evidence. In the meantime, they need to have Matt giving them constant updates from the monitors like he's playing Five Nights at Freddy's. From that spot, he can keep an eye on all of the major hotspots and give them a warning if any of the ghosts start acting up. As for the others, the most important thing that they can do is stick together and use their walkie-talkies to find each other if anyone gets separated. They should keep an eye on each other for any signs of strange behavior, like how Sasha zoned out while looking at the tub, because it could be a sign that the place is getting to them. And they need to take a break before it gets any worse. They might be feeling brave now, but as soon as things start to get even remotely dangerous, I'd call up Kenny and get out of there while they still can. They start off wandering the halls while Lance narrates their progress. Sasha breaks out the recorder to check for EVP, but after playing it back without any response, they decide to move on to another part of the building. On a hunch, Houston leads them back to the haunted window on the top floor. They ask any ghosts who might be listening to open the window, but sadly, Casper's still leaving them on red. Lance gets out a camera with a high-speed shutter that's supposed to capture spirits you can't see with the naked eye, but explains that they'll have to develop the pictures before they can see what's there. Eventually, they decide to split up for a bit, with Sasha taking the patient's cell while Lance goes back to the showers. They're both still trying to get a peep from the spirits, but the only person actually hearing anything is Matt, who's alone watching the cameras from back in the lobby. When all else fails, Lance leads the group back down to the tunnels. It's more of the same here until suddenly they hear a noise from down the hall. This time, it's not just for the camera, and everyone's actually getting nervous as they approach the door where the sound came from, but when TC pulls it open, they realize that it's just a bunch of rats. By 2 a.m., they've basically given up on finding a legit ghost, and everyone gathers up in the lobby to kick it until the caretaker comes to let them out. There's just one problem. While they're all distracted, nobody notices the camera on the top floor suddenly glitch out, and the window slowly creaks open all on its own. In the meantime, Lance sends TC off to get some B-roll footage of the hallways. He's walking around not taking a single thing seriously until he discovers a wheelchair in the hall that he doesn't remember being there before. Answering a call from his wife, he puts the camera down and turns his back on the chair, but while he's not paying attention, it slowly starts to move around like it's being pushed by an unseen force. He enters a bathroom next, where he notices that it feels unnaturally cold, and as he goes to leave, the heavy metal door suddenly slams right in his face. Thinking that it was a fake scare, he calls the crew to come take a look, but nobody can explain how the incident happened. Looking at the tape, everyone's pumped that he actually got some good shit for once, but really it's the first warning sign that they're all about to die. Lance starts trying to communicate with the spirit once again, desperate to get more footage for the show. Just when he's starting to give up, they hear a terrifying loud crash from somewhere out in the hallway and decide to investigate to see what caused it. Following the sound, they end up finding a pushed over gurney with the wheels still spinning at 1,000 1,000 miles per hour, even though there's not supposed to be anyone else in the building. A second later, they hear someone full-on sprinting through the rooms on the floor right above them. The psychic thinks that it must be a prank, but Matt doesn't see anyone on the cameras, so their fearless leader charges up ahead to the next floor, determined to milk the situation for all it's worth. When they don't find anybody in the hallway, Sasha's the first one to point out that it might be real, and takes out the audio recorder to ask the ghost some questions. This time, while they play it back, they hear an uncanny howling noise appear at the end of the tape. All of a sudden, something in the darkness lifts Sasha's hair, and the girl takes off screaming back down the stairs. Terrified, the girl says that she wants to go back to the lobby, and she's not the only one. Houston's completely dropped the act, and even the cameraman wants to get the hell out of there. But Lance here is having none of that. Getting his minions back in line, he tells Houston to take her down to the lobby and then come straight back. For him and TC, they're not going anywhere until he gets some more footage. Okay, Lance here is about to get them all killed if he isn't careful. He's finally about to get something on camera, but he keeps pushing it without realizing that this spirit is showing a pattern. They started off visiting the hotspots and trying to summon it, but nothing happened until Matt started hearing noises in the lobby. And this is important for two reasons. First, because it targeted someone who was alone, and second, because it shows that the ghost is following its own agenda, not listening to them. If you want more proof that the ghost is dangerous, just look at what happened to TC when it waited until he was alone and then slammed the heavy door right in his face. So far, we've seen the spirit go from just making noises to opening windows to violently slamming heavy objects. And if this pattern keeps up, it's only going to get worse from here. It doesn't help that dumbass Lance over here just challenged the ghost to be as aggressive as it wants, and it looks like now it's about to give him his wish. After what happened with Sasha, the spirit has gone from manipulating objects to interacting with them directly. And it's doing it even while they're in groups. It might have only lifted her hair this time, but if it can slam doors, then it could have done something much worse. My best guess is that it's messing with them just to get them more scared before the kill, and Lance here is leading them right back to the danger zone. To make matters even worse, he's splitting them up, which only makes everyone in the group more vulnerable. Someone could easily be injured or killed if the ghost gets more aggressive and starts throwing objects at them instead of the walls. Now that it can close doors, they need to be very careful that they don't get cut off from the others, especially since the short range of their radios make it harder to call for help. As things get more and more intense, the fear could cause them to fight amongst themselves and lead them to make a critical mistake that will make the situation even more dangerous. Just like always, the most important thing is to stick together, since you always want to have a few meat shields around in case of an emergency. At this point, Lance already has his footage, so he should really stop intentionally provoking the spirit into more aggressive actions if he knows what's good for him. Now back in the lobby, they can review the footage that they've already captured, giving the situation time to settle down, and convincing Lance that he should start prioritizing their safety instead. I mean, after all, I'm sure the ghosts will still be there the next time if he leaves and comes back with some more equipment, so there's really no need to keep pushing things until somebody ends up dead. Back at the scene of the crime, they try everything they can to get the spirit to come back, but Lance gets frustrated when nothing seems to work. It's almost time to go anyway, so he takes a few more pictures with the high-speed camera before they leave, but since they can't see them until they're developed, he has no idea that they're actually surrounded by a load of not-so-friendly looking ghosts. On the way back, they start to have trouble finding their way to the lobby, and it's almost like the hallways somehow shifted while they weren't looking. They try calling Matt over the radio, but nobody answers them back, and the guys quickly break out into a heated argument over which way they should go. More than 10 minutes go by before they finally manage to find it, and when they ask Matt what happened, he says that he never even heard them call. Lance is in a rush to get things packed up, so he sends this poor mofo off on his own to pick up the static cameras. Everything's going fine until he makes it to the top floor, but that's when he notices the open window for the first time. Closing it up, he tries calling his friends on the radio, but sure enough, nobody responds back. Just then, there's a loud crash at the end of the hallway. Almost an hour later, Lance is trying to film the outro for the episode when he realizes that Matt is still missing. He isn't picking up the radio, and the others start to worry that he could be hurt. So Lance reluctantly takes the crew to look for him, leaving Houston behind to watch their stuff. There's no sign of Matt anywhere, but things go from bad to worse when they find his gear dumped all over the floor. Lance decides that they need to cover more ground, so he convinces the group to split up again, even though they warn him that it's an absolutely terrible idea. This means that TC has to go off on another solo mission, searching room by room until he finds another staircase. Nervously making his way up, he quickly turns around to check out a suspicious noise, when all of a sudden an unseen force violently shoves him from behind, sending him flying all the way down to the bottom of the stairs. Luckily, he manages to get out of it without breaking his neck, and his friends help him get back on his feet. Now it's 20 after 6, which means that their boy Kenny is late, and they can't find out why since nobody has service to call him. That's when TC decides to take matters into his own hands and starts using a gurney to try and break down the door. With some help from Lance, they're finally able to break through, but what they see on the other side stops them dead in their tracks. Instead of the front door, it's just another hallway going as far as they can see. Their worst fears come true when they look behind them and see that the door has the same cheesy message painted on the other side. Kicking through another exit, it's all the same thing, nothing but more rooms and hallways that never seem to end. Eventually they find a window, but this place was built to keep people in, and with all of their tools out in the van, there's no way that they're getting through. Now Lance remembers the open window on the top floor, but that won't help either because it's still an 80-foot drop straight down on the other end. They see that it's after 8:30 a.m., but yet it's still pitch black outside, and that's when they start to realize that they are in some seriously deep Okay, well, it looks like these four are screwed. Hey Lance, I hope you got the footage you wanted because I've got some bad news for you. You have seriously f***ed up, sir. You know, for somebody who claims to be a ghost expert, you didn't seem too prepared when they actually showed up. What's the matter? Didn't expect to find exactly what you were looking for? Well, it looks like they found you, and that's what you get for breaking rule number 1 of communicating with the dead, which is just don't do it. At first, it might seem like you're the one in control, but it's actually the exact opposite that's true. And in a place like this that's full of 100 years worth of negative energy, you're not exactly guaranteed to attract Casper the Friendly Ghost. I get that it was good footage, but come on, man. Once Dr. Lobotomy started slamming doors and sniffing people's hair, it was probably time to call it a night. Alright, now, the first step on the agenda is to find Matt. Instead of splitting up to randomly search the buildings, they should remember that he was out taking down the cameras and look at the feeds to see where he was last seen. And then from there, they can use their equipment like the EMF meter and thermometer to follow the trail of supernatural activity until they find him. The only problem is the shifting hallways making it difficult to find their way around, but by using tape, chalk, or anything else they have to mark the path as they go, they can avoid accidentally going in circles. Next up is escaping the building itself. Even though the windows are barred, they could still use a piece of metal to pry off the anchor points. Now, if that didn't work, then I'd still keep the top floor window in mind as an option. It's a long drop down, sure, but they can use cables, ropes, sheets, curtains, or even fire hoses from around the facility to climb down. And as long as they can get within 15 feet of the ground, they should survive the fall. It's risky, but personally, I'd rather take my chances with 2 broken legs than stay in this place for 5 more minutes. The next time that Lance turns on a camera, it's already after 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Kenny is still nowhere to be found, and they haven't heard from Matt in hours. Everyone else in the group is sleeping, so he decides to take a quick nap since there's not much else to do, setting his alarm for 1 hour just in case. While they're all passed out, their only floodlight suddenly topples over and shatters on the floor. Lance checks the time, and it looks like he must have overslept because now it's already 8 o'clock at night. Somehow all of the food they have got infested by maggots, but they still have a few bottles of water to keep them going. Thinking back, TC remembers seeing a fire escape when they were outside, so the plan now is to get to the roof and climb down from there. The only problem is, nobody has any idea where the hell they're even going, and it doesn't take long before they start hearing noises in the dark. When they finally get to the stairs, they climb up only to discover that the door to the roof is completely gone. Their only choice is to go back through the hallways. and Lance keeps documenting their progress as evidence if they ever make it out. Eventually, they find a map of the entire building, but for some reason it doesn't seem to match up, and this place is just so complicated that it only confuses them even more. They can't even keep a consistent direction because some kind of anomaly is making their compass do nothing but spin around in circles. That's when they hear a voice screaming for help, and everyone realizes that it must be Matt. They all rush towards the sound, but the room turns out to be empty until all of a sudden something lifts up one of the beds all the way up to the ceiling before aggressively slamming it back down to the floor. Terrified, the group runs back through the hallway, going until they can find an open cell where they can hide out. They're all completely exhausted, so they decide to try and get some more sleep, but when they wake up, they're horrified to see that Sasha has the word hello sliced into her back. Lance cuts the cameras, and the next thing that we see, he's back on the radio trying to call Matt. This time, they're all surprised when he actually answers back, but he sounds terrified, and the signal quickly cuts out. The radios don't have a long range, so they figure that he must be somewhere nearby, and set out hoping to find him before they lose each other again. They're searching for him everywhere when all of a sudden they see a strange figure dart by the end of the hall. Thinking that it must be him, they find the person Blair Witching it in an empty room, but as Lance gets closer, he realizes that it's actually a woman. Suddenly, when she turns around to look at them, the patient's face transforms into a demonic glare, and everyone runs for their lives as she starts chasing them through the building. Finally, they're able to find a storage closet where they can hide, but they can still hear the spirits just outside, and that's when they realize that Houston isn't with them. Meanwhile, the psychic is lost somewhere else in the building, and to make matters even worse, his flashlight goes out, forcing him to wander around in total darkness. All of a sudden, something lifts the man up into the air, choking him as he dangles him above the ground. It finally lets him go, but just when he thinks he's safe, a huge flash of energy sends him flying 20 feet through the air, killing him when he crashes back to the ground. Okay, I don't know why Houston didn't just use his psychic powers to predict that the ghost was about to kill him, but oh well. At this point, the spirits are just trolling them, so first off, they need to stop falling for the obvious traps every time. It's using the calls from Matt as a way to keep luring them out of their hiding spots, only this time, we got our first look at an actual ghoul of some kind. Now, they were too busy running for their lives to get much useful information, but surprisingly, closing the door seemed to work. We'll see this happen again later, and what it shows is that these things actually do have a physical body sometimes. That's great news for us because it means we have the option to square up and throw some hands. Now, obviously, we want to avoid running into these creeps whenever we can, but now that they know they're not alone, everyone should grab some kind of weapon to defend themselves just in case. One option is to stay right here, barricade the room, and hope that help eventually shows up. Going this route stops them from getting split up or wandering into more scary situations, but we have to keep in mind that they're running extremely low on supplies. Without water, they can only hope to survive here for about 3 days at best, and Kenny is the only one who knows where they are. If something happened to him and they can't find a way out, then they'll end up dead long before anyone else comes to check out the place. They probably don't want to give up searching for Matt, but now that's 3 times that the ghost has used him to lure them into a dangerous situation, and this time, it actually got someone killed. Nobody can help him if they all end up dead, but if they're able to escape, then there's at least a chance that they might be able to send back help before it's too late. Before going any farther, they should go back and pick up the map that they found. It might seem useless now, but if they combine it with a strategy for marking off hallways, then it could still be a useful tool for finding an exit. We already mentioned using weapons to defend themselves from the ones with a physical body, but when it comes to the thing that killed Houston, they need to flip on all of their ghost hunting equipment and use them as an early warning sign for whenever the spirit gets close. A powerful spirit like that is going to set off every device they have, so they can use this strategy to avoid areas where it might be present, and if the ghost finder starts beeping, then they'll know to run for their lives. To me, it still seems like their best and only choice is to go for that window on the top floor. They could try to climb down, and even if that's not possible, at least it gives them a place to signal for help for the outside world. Back in the closet, the others are quickly starting to lose hope, with no way to be sure if they ever will see the outside world again. Everyone takes another power nap, and this time when they wake up, they've all been given patient wristbands with their names on them. It doesn't take long before they're lost again, and suddenly an arm crashes through the door right behind Sasha, wrapping around her neck and pulling her in. The boys manage to pull her away, and they all take off running aimlessly down the halls. That's when TC starts yelling for them to come look, and sitting there against the wall, they find their buddy Matt dressed in a hospital gown. His friends ask him what happened, but the dude can hardly form a sentence, and there's no time to waste because they know the demons might be coming for them at any second. Hiding out in a patient room, they ask him if he knows a way out of there, but his only response is that they can't leave until they all get better first. Too afraid to leave the room, the group decides to stay put and wait for the demonic spirits to hopefully move on. The next time that the cameras roll, all hell has broken loose as dozens of demonic arms start reaching out towards them from all over the walls and ceiling. All they can do is run through the halls terrified until they eventually end up back in the room with the tubs. Hiding out behind some old furniture, Lance begins to hear the sound of running water and looks out to see that the bathtub where the patient has died somehow filled all the way up with blood. He tells the others to run, but when they reach the door, they realize that Matt is still staring down into the tub. TC goes to get him, but the moment that he lets his guard down, the ghost of the dead patient lunges out of the tub and drags him down below the surface. Thinking quickly, Matt and Lance work together to flip the tub over, but by the time that they do it, TC and the ghost have both disappeared, never to be seen again. The others find a place to sit down and take a minute to regroup before going back to looking for an exit. This time they eventually find an elevator, and Lance suggests that they could just use it to find a way through the tunnels. The only problem is that it's shut with no power, so he'll have to find something to pry open the doors. Leaving the others behind, he goes back searching through the rooms until he finds a piece of metal that he can use as a crowbar. Just then, he notices a spot of blood on the floor, but when he leans in closer, he realizes that it's actually someone's tongue. Looking up, he suddenly comes face to face with a terrifying spirit perched right above his head, and takes off sprinting back to the others while the ghost chases after him. Using the bar, Lance is able to get the door open, and there's a ladder on the other side that they can use to get down. Suddenly, the spirit comes back just as they're about to escape, and Sasha has to run to help her friend fight it off. They manage to shut the door just in time, but while they're distracted, Matt picks up the camera and decides to film a quick tutorial on how to fall headfirst down an elevator shaft. By the time that they even realize what happened, it's already too late. Taking the ladder down, Lance stops to check his friend's pulse, but it looks like CPR isn't going to fix this one. Their only choice now is to try finding an exit somewhere down here in the tunnels, but they have no idea which way to look, and it's only a matter of time before their flashlights run out. Okay, well, at least they're finally making progress, kinda, but I've gotta say, I don't know if ending up in the tunnels makes things better or worse. With what happened to Houston, TC, and now Matt, there's absolutely no doubt that this ghost isn't going to stop until it kills them all one at a time. The worst part is that these tunnels are one of the most haunted spots in the building, and even Kenny felt a presence here, which means that the spirits who live here are going to be extremely powerful. That's bad news now that they both have only one other person to use as a meat shield, and that's not the only supply that they're running low on. They've also got no food or water besides what they can find down here in the tunnels, and honestly, when you see how disgusting this place is, they might be better off just starving. Their flashlight and camera batteries are running low too, and if those go out, then they'll be completely lost in the darkness of the tunnels, which are hard enough to navigate as it is. Plus, in such a confined space, they don't have a lot of options for places to run or hide, so they need to be very careful about what they decide to do next. First, I'd start by checking Matt's body for anything useful, since there's a chance that he might have some crucial information that could help us figure out what's happening. Then, all you can really do is pick a direction and start walking. Think of it like a maze. One way to solve any maze is to use the right hand rule. Just put your right hand on the wall, and as long as you never take it off, you'll eventually find your way out. We know that the tunnels are about a quarter mile long, so even if they're only traveling 1 mile per hour, they should be able to cover the entire distance in about 15 minutes. Hopefully somewhere along the way, they'll find a door or service exit that leads them out of here. It's important for them to stick together at all times, since the other person is going to be your last line of defense if something happens. They should hold on to that stick and try to get a weapon for Sasha as well. That way, they'll both be ready to fight if they run into any more ghouls down here in the tunnels. As scary as it is, they need to try and navigate without their flashlight or camera, preserving the batteries for as long as possible and saving them for emergencies only. This will also give their eyes time to adjust to the darkness, allowing them to extend the battery life even longer. Now, if they can't find a way out no matter what, and it looks like they're completely out of options, there is one last idea that they could try. He might not have been speaking clearly, but Matt actually told them exactly what the spirits want. They want more people, so they can keep doing more lobotomies or whatever the hell the ghosts are trying to do. Well, Lance could try and strike a bargain with the ghosts, offering to bring them more victims if they let him go. It might even be the same deal that Kenny worked out, which would explain how he's been able to work nights alone here without any trouble. It might not be the most honorable solution, but it's better than spending eternity as a lobotomy ghost in this hellhole, so it couldn't hurt to try. Lance starts walking in a random direction, but no matter how far they go, the tunnel never seems to change. Before long, the girl's sickness starts to come back, and she collapses to the floor, throwing up huge gobs of blood. Getting back on their feet, the two of them wander through the tunnels for so long that they completely lose track of time. They've spent hours walking in the same direction, but the hallways just never come to an end. The worst part is that they can hear the spirits closing in, but with Sasha unable to go on, all they can do is sit and wait. After hours and hours of them sitting in the same spot, a paranormal mist suddenly fills the tunnel, and when Lance wakes up, he's horrified to realize that Sasha disappeared. Desperate to find her, he takes off down the tunnels in a random direction, yelling for her until his flashlight finally goes out. As a last hope, Lance pulls out the recorder and asks the spirits what they want from him, but when he plays it back, all he hears is demonic laughter on the other side. There's no way to tell how much time passes, but as the hours go on, he starts to completely lose his mind, resorting to eating the rats just to stay alive. Sometime later, the man wakes up to some shocking news. A new door appears at the end of the tunnel, and he pushes it open to see what's on the other side, finding himself in an office with a chalkboard showing a detailed diagram of the human brain. Over the desk, somebody hung up pictures of patients going through all kinds of f***ed up surgeries, and that's when he realizes that he's just found the office of the lobotomy lover himself. Walking down the hall, he passes by cell after cell full of different devices that were definitely not approved by the American Medical Association, until he eventually walks through a plastic sheet into an old-school operating room. Stacked all around the place are crates full of strange books and bottles of unknown chemicals. On top of one, he finds a tray full of shiny new lobotomy tools. Over in the corner, there's an occult sigil painted on the floor with a human skull in the center, and a leather-bound book full of ancient runes that make it seem like these doctors were into more than just botching surgeries. That's when Lance hears something hit the ground and turns around just in time to see the ghost doctors finishing up with another patient. Before he can even react, the demon teleports across the room and forces him onto the operating table, because now it's time for his lobotomy next. The last message is from Lance, with blood dripping out of his eyes. Turning on the camera, he signs off for the last time, realizing that he should have just started a podcast instead. Grave Encounters. Sick movie. I mean, those characters were doing some pretty shady shit in there, but otherwise a pretty satisfying and enjoying ending, don't you think? But I have a question for you. What would you have done differently? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. I'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.